Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So imagine you are an Israelite and you are living in the land of Goshen. You are a slave to Pharaoh, and so was your father, and so was your grandfather. And then along comes this 80-year-old man who tells you that God has sent him to redeem you from Egypt. What do you think? Finally! Absolutely. Spoken like somebody who has read to the end of the book. Because that is not the reaction that the Israelites give to Moses.
He's crazy.
He's crazy, but more than just he's crazy, you're going to make things worse. You're going to make things worse. What do you mean you're going to go talk to Pharaoh and tell him to let us go? If you go and stir the pot, then things are just going to get worse for us, and we're not getting out of here anyway. So just stop. But lo and behold, Moses goes, and he approaches Pharaoh, and he says, Adonai has decreed, let my people go, and things get worse. Turns out the people were right, that stirring up the pot made life harder. Now, rather than just making the normal quota of bricks, they have to make the bricks and collect the straw that's used as the ancient form of rebar in order to make those mud bricks. Thanks a lot, Moses. So nice of you to show up and help us the way you have. Now, it's easy when you've read the book to know that they should have treated Moses very differently. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we probably would do much the same. Anybody here ever have a slightly recurring toothache? Just comes up and back and forth. Maybe an ice cube hits it and it feels a little sensitive. You immediately rush to the dentist, right? Or do you say, it'll get better. It's probably just a little, it's in the little thing there. This is not going to be a problem. And that always makes it better, right? Ignoring the toothache, it goes away and you never have a problem with it ever again.
It gets worse.
It gets worse. It gets worse. It turns out that for most things in life, the longer we leave it, the worse it gets. That the more we put off dealing with a particular problem, the worse it gets. But the other truth in life is that when we finally end up dealing with it, it gets a whole lot worse immediately before it begins to get better. Those two things are absolutely true. And as humans, we are right to be confused about what we should do. After all, if I go to the dentist, chances are he's going to say I've got a cavity and need a filling. Worst case, I might need a root canal. And that's going to really be uncomfortable, a lot more uncomfortable than just that achy tooth occasionally in my mouth. Having to sit there in that chair and all of that, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to traumatize anyone who is not fond of dentistry, but good thing Bernie's not here. But it is going to get a whole lot worse, much, much faster. You will compress the ache of the tooth into an hour on the chair, and it's going to feel much worse during that time. But then, once it's taken care of, it will begin to feel better, and all of that additional time of suffering and pain won't occur. All that you were going to experience if you didn't deal with the problem will no longer be there in your future. You are taking those pockets of suffering, ever incremental and increasing suffering, and you are condensing them into a short and preferably even smaller amount in order to get it done, to get it fixed, and then to get back into the good stuff. But it's hard as humans to want to do that. We don't like borrowing suffering from the future to the present just to make the future better, because we tend to be short-sighted. We tend to want right now to be as comfortable as possible, rather than thinking about what is the aggregate of the comfort of my life over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. And that creates a lot of short-sightedness. We see it in the Israelites there in the land of Egypt, who can't imagine that they are going to be free and only see that dentist chair coming for them if you want to stir the pot now. And it does take a long time before we are finally pulled out of the land of Egypt. It takes a year, according to our understanding of the book of Exodus. It was not Moses showed up and then we were on the next plane out. Moses shows up, things get worse, and we go through a lot of trouble before we finally leave. And then, of course, we have a long trip to go through, but eventually we do make it. Could we have done it sooner? Perhaps. More importantly, could I do it sooner? What is my own exodus that I am in need of? What is it in my life right now that I am saying, it's not so bad. I can put up with this for longer. I don't need to change my job. I don't need to change where I live. I don't need to mix things up with my family, even though, they've been a little difficult for me and it's never fun when I go around. I'll put it off because I don't want to deal with the crisis that will come if I do it now. All of us have at least one thing in our life that we are putting off that we should be doing now. And we're putting it off for the very logical reason that dealing with it is going to cause pain. But not dealing with it doesn't avoid pain. It merely smears it out over a much longer time span and prevents the healing from ever beginning. So find those things. Deal with them better than our ancestors did in Egypt. After all, they had their spirit crushed by slavery and by harsh labor. For us, yes, we have had our own harshness, but God willing, none of us are currently slaves, and therefore all of us are better able to tackle. And if you're not able to tackle it on your own, that's what a community is for. We can lean on each other to deal with the problems that face each one of us, and in turn, help each other through the problems that face the other. And in that way, none of us have to be held captive by the fears of the crisis that awaits us, because we know we're not going through it alone. Shabbat Shalom.